Welcome, this is Mark Gerhard, and this is week 6 of 3ds Max 101. Today we're going to be looking at animation, specifically character animation. We'll be looking at using bones, skinning. We'll look at inverse kinematics, how we set up a bones structure with inverse kinematics. And then we'll look at one of the default animation systems that comes with 3ds Max, Character Studio Biped. So I'm going to try to keep the examples really simple as much as I can, so that they will be clear and easy to do. So the first thing, we saw general animation in the last class, but most animation, character animation, is done through the use of some kind of a bone structure that is animated, and then the bones affect a mesh. So here I have a simple cylinder that I've set up. You can see the cylinder in 4 views, and I will click on bones. Let me make the front view large. Hello, there we go. And I will create some bones. Max bones have basic bone parameters here. I'm not going to use the fins at this point. I'm just going to start with standard bones, and I'll start by clicking, and I'll add 1, 2, 3 bones, and then when I stop, when I right-click, the 4th bone is always added to the top of the stack of bones. If I go back to the 4 views, I can see that the bones from the top view are sitting inside the cylinder. Now, I've designed this so that the size of the bones is relatively fits inside the cylinder, but is probably around 60% or 70% of the cylinder width as well. And this is a good way to work, as you'll see in a minute. So once that I have that, also generally what you do when you're working with the character is that you freeze the character and make the character see-through. So if I had this set to realistic, then I would right-click on the cylinder itself, go to Object Properties, and choose See-Through. I think Alt-X is the shortcut for doing that. And I might also right-click and choose Freeze Selection so that I couldn't inadvertently click on this object. This is simple enough that I really don't think I'll need to worry about that at this point. And in fact, I'm going to go back to wireframe mode and back to single viewport. Okay, so select the viewport and make it come big like this. Okay, there's the object, there are the bones. Let's animate the bones for a second. I'll turn auto key on. I'll go to frame, let's say 25. I'll select this particular bone and I will rotate it like that. I'll go to frame 50. I'll take this particular bone and I'll rotate it back like that. So you can see the animation of the bones, a very simple animation, and at present time not affecting the cylinder. So to link up the animation of the bones so that it will affect the cylinder, I select the cylinder, I go to the Modify panel, and in the modifier list, move my cursor over the list, hit S on the keyboard, it takes me to the S's and I can choose Skin. Now the Skin modifier essentially takes each of the vertices in the cylinder and it chooses various bones to affect them. In order to do that, we click on Add Bones. We then get a Select Bones dialog box. Now I have this set to display children, so if I click and expand here, I can see the 4 bones that have been selected here. And just for the sake of learning, I'm only going to select the first 3 bones here. And we will say select. And now those bones have been added into the bone list. If I click Edit Envelopes, I can now see with each bone the influence that bone has. And just to make sure that I've done this the way I want, I'm going to back away a little. I want this to come up wrong to begin with, and I'm going to increase the height of the cylinder somewhat like that. So now again, I'll look at I'll say Edit Envelopes, and I can see in each case the bones, the way the envelopes are set up. If I actually go right now and look at this, I will see that despite my best intentions, I couldn't get it to not do what I wanted it to do. So let's see, how about if we delete bone 3 for a second, and now let's see, there we go, that's what I'm looking for. So here's an example. This is very common that you get your character skinned, you start doing animation, and you find that as the character steps off and walks down the street, that the heel of his foot or the edges of his elbow or the edges of his hips stay behind. So here we have the top of the cylinder is staying behind in that fashion. Let me zoom in here. I'll go ahead and zoom in so you can see the bone envelopes. And to adjust the bone envelopes, what I do is I select a particular envelope, and then I got to zoom way in here so you can see it clearly. There is a little pink vertex or square there, and that lets me extend or shrink the bone envelope down. So I'm going to say that's bone 2. Let's go ahead now and say add, and I'll add bone 3. And now let's take that bone 3 envelope and adjust that as well. Like that. Zoom back a little bit and let's see what happens there. So we have some influence. I'll go ahead and add the 4th bone right now. Add bone 4, select, and let's make sure that that bone, it's extended all the way up to the top. So now we can fix that. While we're in here doing that, you can see that there are there's color coding to each of the vertices that are inside the bone structure. So the color coding indicates where the vertices are in full force, where they're blended with another envelope, or where they're not really available at all. Okay, so now let's just actually show you the technique that you use to adjust those envelopes and to get into a little more detail here. Let me zoom in a little more just to say I've shown you. You have to zoom in and find that one, and that lets you adjust the envelope there, and you can see that it shows the vertices that are being affected or not affected. But you can also control the shape by selecting a particular part there. I can select this one here and make this, move this in or out or up or down as needed to increase the effect of a particular bone. Let me shift Z on that. The effect of a particular bone on a particular set of vertices. If I want to actually go vertex by vertex and clean it up, there's a very nice tool, although fairly complex to work with, and that is the the weighting tool. The way I work with the weighting, let's look at this for a second. Let's see, as we go like this. So that's bone 3, and here's bone 2. So let's suppose we want to change the this set of vertices right here, so that those are affected more by bone 2 than by bone 3. The way we do that is we come over here, we turn on select vertices. Then we can actually select those vertices and they turn white. Then we can come down here and we can go to these tools. There's a weight table, and I can take the weight table and say that I want to show only the selected vertices. And so these are the vertices that are selected, and then it shows me the bones, and it says these are now currently set for bone 3, 100% weighted to bone 3. Now, there's probably many techniques that you can use to achieve this. The technique that I'm familiar with, the way that I've done this, is using the weight tool. The weight tool allows me to, let's move this up a little bit, okay? It lets me to say, okay, so those vertices are now selected to 100% to bone 3. If I make it 50%, now they're 50% to bone 3 and 50% to bone 1. And if I watch the animation now, I can see now it's changed the way it's done that. And if I move this to bone, let's say if I take it back to bone 3, and then I say I want 90% bone 3. Oops, I got it wrong here. Bone 3, 90% bone 3, 10%. Then we have a little bit more like that. I can also actually do painting weights. And in painting weights, let's close these down for a minute. I can click here and I get a painting option. Now I have a giant brush at the moment. I need to change that brush down. Let's try 11. Let's try 1. There we go. Okay, so I could adjust, I could paint weights here. So I could say these are the weights that I'm painting onto it. Let's see what we got now. Okay. The last thing, let's actually open up a file that I was working on earlier, if I can find it. Open, save changes. Well, maybe I can just do this without, let's back it away a little bit here. So actually, let's go back and adjust the weights on this a little bit more. Let's take bone 3 and let's zoom in on this and move that, turn off paint weights, and now click on that one and move this up here a little bit. And it's not really doing it. What I want to show you is that you can add one more level of detail to this by selecting a particular bone. In this case, we'll pick bone 3. Bone 3 is the child of bone 2. And then we can create a relationship in advanced parameters, in gizmos, between bone 3 and bone 2 with a deformer. So I'm going to use a bulge angle deformer. I'll add a bulge angle deformer, and that will give a relationship between the 3 and 2. So here are the deformer parameters. The parent is bone 2, the child is bone 3, the current angle is set there, and then we can edit a lattice. And then we have to select the bone, have the bone selected, I believe. So if I have bone 2 selected, Is that right? No, that's not right. Let's go back to bone 3. Let's take this out. Let's go again on bone 3. Let's add it. Now we have it. And we'll go edit lattice. And a lattice should appear here for me to, I don't have the vertices selected, that's why. Okay. Make sure that I have select vertex chosen. All the way up at the top here, it's selected. Now let's select those vertices and then come to edit lattice. And I'm still not seeing it. What is going on with this thing? Let me load up the one that I worked on just before. Open. Save changes. Here you can see, I'll select the original bone. It has a bulge angle deformer. I select, I have to have the bone selected, I have to have the vertices selected. Bone 3, and select vertices, edit envelopes, turn that off. That's what I didn't have, was edit envelopes on, I believe, in the other one. So now you can see, let's zoom in so you can see this nice and big, that now when I say edit lattice, I come over to, notice that it's based on the angle between one bone and the next. So the parent bone here, at that particular angle, I can adjust the lattice. I can say this is going to bulge out based on that. And then when the angle is 0 between the two of them, the lattice goes back. And I could actually make the lattice go inward if I wanted to, like that, and out like that. However I want. I can click here on Edit Bulge Key Curves, and this will actually show me, based on the angle, what I've set. And these keys can be changed to have slow in and out. Just the same sort of thing that you're used to seeing before on the curve editor. So there it is. There's other stuff inside of here, but this is really enough to get you started. Bones are pretty powerful inside this product. Okay, so a bone structure like that I've created is one aspect of what Biped is going to take care of. The other thing that I want to show you is inverse kinematics. So for inverse kinematics, I am going to open up a file that I've prepared. Let's see. Well, again, it doesn't seem to be there. Let's see, edit. Let's try doing a fetch and see if it shows up that way. Fetch, yes. If not, I can create it quick enough. No. All right. Reset. It changes. I crashed several times this afternoon, and maybe that's why it's not there. All right. So what I want to show you, to recap what we did last week very quickly, is that here I'm going to make a just a cone. and then let's go to the front view, and we'll make it big. Let's zoom back. We will take this cone, and we're going to make some multiple copies of this. And I use a cone because of the pivot point of the cone is at the end there. So I'll say, okay, we have 4 of those there, and let us create a hierarchy between them. That is the grandson or great-grandson to the grandson, grandson to the parent, parent to the super parent. So I now have created a hierarchy. If I pick up the parent and move it, it moves like that. Let's make a few copies of this so that we'll have some to work with. And these are going to be copies, not instances. We'll make another set over like this. Okay. So this is called forward kinematics, where I take a particular member of the chain, and if I rotate it, then the descendants rotate along with it. If I move a particular piece of the chain, all of the descendants move with it. If I click on the end of the chain and move or rotate, Control Z, or rotate, it has no effect on the rest of the chain. But I can invert that kinematic chain by using something called inverse kinematics. So to set up inverse kinematics, there's a lot of ways in Max to do that, but the most recent features are, let's go ahead and select all of these objects and then choose animation. And inside animation, I find IK solvers. IK solver means inverse kinematic solver. Now, the question is, are these, they are linked. So, inverse kinematic solver, I will say an HI solver. Now, let's see, if I choose that one, then I am applying that, saying that's the end of the chain, and now I'll click on this one, and now I get an inverse kinematic handle. The inverse kinematic handle is automatically enabled in the motion panel, and now if I take that and I move that, I can get animation by affecting. I'm affecting the end rather than the beginning. Now let's undo that for a second. And again, let's select this guy and choose a different solver. This time I'll choose the IK limb solver, which is only applied to 2 objects. So, and that's a much faster solver. So you can see that the bottom 2 are not being used. Now I can, most IK chains get pretty complicated. I'll choose this one, I'll go here, I'll go here. I'll choose again a IK solver. I'll set it there. Actually, that would be better to, let's do something a little more complicated than that. We'll take these 3. I'm sorry, we'll start with this. Can't pick 3. The one you pick is the one that's going to go. I'll add another HI solver down to here. And then what often happens is that you then proceed to link one of these to another. So I can say this will be the child of this one. And then if I pick up this one and I move it, you can see that the other one moves with it. But if I pick this one up, I have independent controls like that. Also notice that the IK handle can move away from the end of the chain. So inverse kinematics, through different kinds of solvers, on bones, if you build a bone structure, let's go back to the bones for a second, and I'm making a very thin bone structure here like this. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. Control Z, let's undo those bones. I can automatically assign the bone structure. Here, let's make these so they're a little more visible. 3, 3. Okay, let's see what happens now. Let's try 10. Okay, there we go. So I'm saying assign to children and assign to root. Right click, and now I've automatically created a bone structure that's applied there. HI stands for history independent, HD stands for history dependent. The original Mac solvers were history dependent and they became very slow and unwieldy, so they added the history independent solver, pretty much the same solver that's used in Maya. The IK limb solver is an extremely fast solver that's only applied to a limb, a forearm and an elbow and an arm. One other solver is the IK spline solver. Let's see if I can demo that real quick. I'll make myself a spline. And then let's see if I remember how we do this. I select, I think, all of them. I'll find out in a minute. Not all of them. I'll select the one that's going to be the end then, I guess. And IK solver, spline solver. Oh wait, are these linked into a hierarchy? Okay, they are. All right. So select the end of the hierarchy. Come to animation, IK solver, spline IK solver, and the spline IK solver. Then I let's go down here, and then pick shape. Okay. I think that I've only done, let's try it one more time. Undo and animation, IK solvers, IK spline solver. Pick the joint to complete the IK chain. So now I've chosen all 5 of these and then select the spline and there we go. Now they follow the spline. And then instead of IK handles, what I use to animate are the, and turn auto key on, let's go to frame 35 or so, and now we will go to the vertex and choose the vertices in the spline itself. So if I turn auto key on and I say I want this to move over here, I want this one to move up there, I've animated based on the IK spline. That's a pretty neat tool. And notice that the all the objects follow along the path of the spline. Okay, why have I shown you all this? Well, if you're doing traditional classical animation, if you're an animator, you're used to working in Softimage, used to working in Maya, then you're comfortable with making your own bone structures, assigning your own hierarchies and control objects, and you can use all of what I've just shown you. Max was designed for everybody, and everybody includes people that are not knowledgeable animators, for instance, design visualization experts, medical animators, people who they want to make it a little easier. So they've invented a number of systems that come with Max that are for making animation easy. So the Biped system was the first system developed. This was actually the first plug-in that was really, really successful for Max. And let me zoom in here a little onto the grid. And I go to the Systems menu and I choose Biped. And then I can drag out a Biped. And let's make this large so that you can see it quickly. Now, once I have created the Biped, I've made a giant Biped. I'm going to make this biped a normal size character, let's say 6 feet. And then let's zoom in to that biped. And my grid is set to 10 feet. So my biped is small on this giant grid. The biped has different kinds of body types I can choose. Here's the male body type, the female body type, the classic biped. This was from the original versions, and the skeleton biped, which is used most of the time. In addition to that, there are all sorts of other things we can change in the structure of the biped. Some of the neat things that we can do is we can add neck links. We can change the amount of spline links we want. If I come around here, the back side of the biped, I can have tail links. So I can use this to create all different kinds. I also have ponytail links, and I can make, these can actually be moved or rotated around if I want to do horns. Let's see if that'll work. I believe that I can pick that up and move that. It's probably not necessary to go into that right now. Okay, let's go back to the structure of the biped. Once I have created this biped, and this is sort of an anomaly from Max, I go to the motion panel rather than the modify panel to make adjustments. And once I've created the biped, I can go and choose figure mode, structure, and this gives me all of the same features that I had when I was creating the biped. Number of fingers, for instance. Let's zoom in here so you can see. Ooh. Move this around a little bit. There's some fingers. How many finger links are we going to have? Let's move back a little bit. We're getting some clipping here in the viewport. There we go. So toes, toe links. There's a bunch of various things we can do to the biped structure. Now, I actually didn't show you this inside of the bones. Bones has something called a bone edit mode. After you've made the bones, you can change that. Let's get rid of the tail links and the ponytails, and let's drop the neck down to something normal. But what I wanted to show you was that inside of figure mode, I can make adjustments to the biped using the scale tools. So for instance, I might select, hold on, I'll select, let's make sure we're in figure mode, and figure mode is found right there. And so with figure mode in place, I can do things to the biped. Let's see, what shall I do? How about I'm going to select one arm, and I will then go and say symmetry, and I'll have both arms, and then I'll go scale, and I'll scale those arms. Now he's got short little arms. I believe it's page up, takes me up to the next level. I use page up and page down, and I will make those arms short. And let's go ahead and rotate them around like this, page down, and we'll rotate those around like this if we want. Let's take this one here, rotate it around over like that. So I can make this the default skeleton if I want. Let's suppose I'm doing a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. I might use some feature kind of like that. I would probably make these legs gigantic then. Select them like this. Let's make them huge legs. You can do whatever you want to the biped. Okay, now that I've shown you that, I'm going to resist, and let's just get rid of this biped and make just a normal one. And delete. And now let's get back to a normal view. And make a normal biped. Okay. So the biped structure, you would fit it inside of your skeletal character, just like I had demonstrated with a cylinder. You would freeze the character, then you would go into figure mode, and then you would scale your biped to fit inside the character. Let's hold this for a second, and let's see if we have a character called CSman3, and say save your changes. No, we can get back to this in a minute. And let's zoom back a bit, and let's get into shaded mode. Let's also turn on the not sure why I'm seeing how consistent colors. Will that help me? How about lighting and shadows? Turn off shadows. Drive me nuts that we can't see this guy. Standard OmniLight. Put an OmniLight in here in the scene. I don't know why, but he doesn't like to be showing you. Anyway, you're not really seeing the biped here the way you'd think you might, but that is because you are seeing each biped bone has been set to be shown as boxes. But if fact is, if we go to the hierarchy panel, to the motion panel, you'll see there's the biped. So the biped is been placed into this just the same. How about wireframe? There, that'll do it. I believe that if we right-click on these and go to Object Properties, we'll see that they've been set to display as box. And that's a little trick that you can use, because then the biped sits outside of the figure, and it's easy for you to make that that work. So inverse kinematics has been set up in this biped so that the biped will resemble a human in its movement. Let's fetch the original biped back. Yes, fetch. Here we go. And then I can demonstrate what I'm talking about. So the biped has, you can use traditional animation, but it also has some automatic animation. And this also will sort of recount the original history of the biped. Biped was designed by Unreal Pictures, Michael Gerhard and his team. Can't remember Susan's last name, but Michael and Susan worked on Biped. Michael was a person who had studied robotics, and he had been working on actually trying to design how a robot could be made that could climb stairs. And out of that, he invented the biped. So the first thing that the biped can do is that it has a footstep mode that allows a novice animator to create a walking animation. Now the walking animation, once we've chosen footstep mode, then we create footsteps, which we drop on the ground and then create keys for them. We can drop a sequence of footsteps one after another, or we can place them as we like this. So there's one. I've made 7 footsteps, and then I'll make him coming back and end up like that. Once I've created the footsteps, I need to go to the footstep operations and select create keys. Click on that. It'll take a moment. And now if we hit the play button, we can see that we have created the biped animation. Edit. Hold. If I was to bring in that character that I had brought in earlier, you would see that the character would be walking just like this. So you'll have to trust me that that's how it works. The other thing that I can do is I can select these footsteps. And let's select all the footsteps. I can then do things like bend the footsteps around like that, and deactivate and make fresh keys for them. And now let's see what we have. Hit the play button. I can select individual footsteps. And let's move this one up in the air. Let's move this one up in the air a little bit less. Maybe rotate it just a little bit. Again, deactivate them and make new keys. Hit the play button. Woo! I did something bad there, didn't I? It's easy to make the biped do things you don't want it to do. Okay. Let's go ahead and make a fresh biped and show you. So the footstep mode is a simple way to make your biped do things, but then there are more traditional methods. Let's get out of footstep mode for a second. Let's select that biped and delete him. Edit, fetch. So there's also freeform animation. No, this biped already has animation on it, so we will just go File, Reset. Actually, let's not reset. Let's just delete. Okay. And make a fresh biped. So the biped can do traditional animation just the way Max does it. It's got a little bit that's slightly different than Max. Think of this right now as simply a bone structure that's been created, just like the bones, but they've been set up with certain inverse kinematic limits to them, so that certain of the joints can't bend in certain directions, certain of the joints can't rotate in certain directions. So what I do when I create biped animation, and I believe this is a good practice, is the very first thing I do is select all of the pieces of the biped, and then I can right-click on the time slider and choose Create Key and say OK, and that creates a key that holds for every object in the scene. Unlike Max, if I go to frame 30 and I rotate a particular object, Biped will not create the key at frame 0. So I've trained myself to automatically do that, and that seems to work really nicely. So here I've created that, and now I'm going to select the pelvis, and I'll select this guy and shift it over like that, and let's have his head shift over like that. Slide the slider back, and this is freeform animation. He's just doing a simple little animation like that. Inverse kinematics is at work. If I select the foot and I say move and I push the foot, you'll see that the knee bends. If I grab the hand, the elbow bends. Michael Gerhard was very interested in dance notation, and that the biped was considered for use in dance notation when it first got started. It was used by Merce Cunningham. Okay, so this is freeform animation. Freeform animation in biped is very full-featured. If I go to the motion panel and I select a foot, I can go to, you can see that there are all sorts of specialized keys. I can set a planted key, a sliding key, or a free key. If I set a planted key for the foot at frame 0, now I'll go to frame 25, and then I can choose, the parent for the biped is something that's called center of mass. And if I zoom in and make this wireframe, you can see the biped center of mass. If I choose track selection, biped has independent tracks for the horizontal and vertical movement of the center of mass. But that's one way to get to the center of mass. And notice that now if I animate this coming down, that because I have a planted key for the foot, that the center of mass, now notice that I didn't get a key on the center of mass previously. So I want to go up there and I will set a key for the center of mass. And then now we'll see that now the biped comes down, goes back up like that. Let's get out of wireframe for a second. So there's my my quick little animation. I can also set planted keys on the hands. I'll take that hand there and I will set a planted key for it. I like to practice setting the keys in pairs. So I'll set another planted key there. And now if I do something like rotate this around, you can see how the hand is planted in space during that period. There you can see as I go back and forth here in between those two keys, the hand is stuck in space. That's really what inverse kinematics does for you. Okay. All right, let's make one more biped. It's so easy to make a biped, why not? And in this biped, I want to show you the idea of layers, layered animation, and then we can take a quick break and then come back and show more of biped animation. So layers work like this. I'll go ahead and turn auto key on. I'll select, right-click, choose select, and I will select all of the elements of the biped. Instead of right-clicking there, I could also go to the motion panel, and I could click and set a key that way. I could make sure, if I want, turn that off, that I've got keys set for the center of mass, like that. Okay. So now let's go to, let's say, frame 20, and I'm going to rotate the arm up in the air. Oh, got to turn on auto key. Rotate the arm up in the air. And let's go to frame 40 and rotate the arm back down. I should be able to copy these keys, Control-C. Oh, what happened there? We'll do it by brute force. Arm goes up, 20 more frames. Arm goes down, 20 more frames. Arm goes up. Let's see what we've just made. All that's happening is that this is going on that biped. Now, let's just actually save that off as a particular file, and we'll call that right arm up down, and save it as a BIP file. One of the great features of Biped is its layered animation. So I can come over here and I can create a new layer. And in the new layer, I will have, let's have the head turned side to side. So in the new layer, auto key on, head's looking left, head's looking right, head's looking left, head's looking right. Let's go ahead and call that head look. Let's make another layer, and this will be where he bends down. So now you can see the pink shows the animation of the other layer. And I've created multiple layers of animation here. And then I can decide that I don't want a particular layer. Maybe I don't want that layer active. So now I've just got those two layers. Or I can say, go to layer head look, go to the next layer, head look, layer 2. I never get named that. That'll be bend. Make that active. And I have various animation capabilities in that fashion. Layered animation is very, very nice and powerful in Biped. Once I've finally gotten that and I decided that I like what I've done, I can collapse the layers. As a rule, I think it helps stability and helps performance to go ahead and collapse all the layers. Now I no longer have layered animation, but instead I have the animation that I've created, just like that. Okay, let's take a quick 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we're going to look at some more of the features inside of Biped, the ability to load pre-built animations, the ability to script multiple animations together, and to use the motion flow system.
Alrighty.
Okay, and we're back. Okay, I'm going to make one more biped here in the scene. I've reset max because I want to show you some of the cool things that you can do with Biped. It's a very powerful system and lets you get into animation very quickly. If I go to the motion panel, instead of using the footstep mode, I can load pre-created animations. Max, you can find libraries of animation files. Max's Character Studio animation file is called BIP, BIP. I'm going to go load a BIP file. I have a collection that used to ship with Max 9. I'm actually using obsolete files so that when I load them, it will tell me that. I'm loading obsolete files. Let's see, what would we like to show? How about on stage? Let's have, I'm going to try something that's like play. How about bees? I like this one. Say OK. And this was a footstep animation that was created. Let's hit the play button and see what we get. So here's 300 frames of animation. And you can see that even though it's a footstep animation, that there are keys in the track view that have been created here. Let's try a few more files. Hula hoop. Let's turn this around so we can see it. Okay, here we go. He picks up the hula hoop and he's gonna spin it. There he goes. And there's about 200 of these animations that used to ship with Macs. I don't think they ship anymore, but you can probably find them on the web, or if not, you can locate your own. In addition to BIP files, you can load STP or step files. It's not the same as the STP that you find from the mechanical world. Macs also, there are ways to get BVH in here as well. I think if I come up here, this shows you all the different formats: BIP, BVH, CSM. Those were the main formats that shipped back when this library of motions came out. Okay, so there's lots and lots of different ones that you can select from. You can save your own. But what happens when you want to actually sequence one animation after the next? You can do that with something that's called motion flow mode. To do that, let me, I don't even think I really need to reset, but I think it might be safer if I do. So what I'll do is I will select this biped and delete him, and then create a new biped over here. There's our biped. Zoom back. So I have a sequence of animations that I'm going to show you how to put together using the motion flow mode. Now, the motion flow mode is fairly old software, and it's good software, but it's pretty finicky. So the way that I do it, there may be simpler methods for doing this, but the way that I do it is I start here, and then I need to show the motion graph. So the first thing I do is I click Show Graph, and the motion graph is going to let me create, let me get the various clips loaded. And I go over here to create clip, and then I can create 1 clip, 2 clips, 3 clips, 4 clips, 5 clips. I can right click on one of these clips and then browse. And I have a system set up which is skate. There's a folder of skating ones. So if I choose, let's see, the one skate up, I have a little thing here that shows me what happens. He gets up off of the ice. I'll say open that up, and did I choose it? Hang on. It's decided to freeze up on me. There it is. It says it's obsolete, and now it's there. Skate up is in place. Say OK. Let me repeat this, and I'll do the next one. Hopefully these will go a little bit faster. Once he skates up, then skate start. And that's going to let him just take the first step, open that up. It will show me how many frames. This is only 29 frames long. Say OK. Third one, right click, browse. Then let's have him do skate loop. And then he should go left, right, left, right. I'm not sure how many times he does that. 122 frames. Say OK. The fourth clip we'll choose will be skate turnaround. Say OK. The fifth clip will be skate back. He's skating backwards now. Say OK, open. OK. And OK. Now, let's go ahead and then define the script. So when it says define script, we'll call it skating. And then it's as simple as clicking on these and having them ordered. Now, I'm not really dealing with any kind of transitions between them right now. So he gets up, skate start, skate loop, skate turn around, and skate back. Okay, now in order for us to actually really look at this, I'm going to do one thing. Let me go back to 4 views. Hello. Oh, wrong one. And Max is chugging here a little bit because it's got a lot to think about right now. And in the 4 views, I'm going to create a camera, target camera, that is looking at this guy. And then I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to link the camera to the biped. Let's see what the camera sees here. Cameras, camera 1. Okay, there we are. I think it might be good to have this camera up in the air a little bit. I know I'm taxing my machine here. And let's even move the target up a little bit. Right click. Select. Move. That's good. Okay, now I'm going to link camera target, and linking it to the biped's leg or something like that. And now, if we play the animation, we'll be able to see him as he travels. Up. Not quite. He's getting up, and off he goes. He turns around, and he does that. So if we go back to the biped itself and back to the motion panel, you can see the script. If I open up the graph again, you can see that transitions have been made already inside the graph. If I want to, I can create my own transitions, and I can adjust the transitions if they need adjusting. I'm not going to go into that level of detail. The other thing that is interesting is that for each of these I can adjust the start position and the start rotation. So I have some control over this as I'm working. And that is the motion flow graph. Okay. Now, the one other thing that I would like to show you is the motion mixer. Whoops, I didn't mean to click on that. Let's click on this again, get off of that. For the motion mixer, I think actually what let me do is reset. I don't have a very good example to show the motion mixer, but at least I can show you the premise of it. So we'll make biped here. And instead of having one frame after the next or one animation after the next, what we have for the biped in the motion mixer is the ability to actually take bits and pieces of animation and apply them to bits and pieces of the biped. Let's see if I can accomplish this. So here we are in the motion mixer, and we have tracks here. If I right-click on one of these tracks, I can say I would like to add a track group below. Let's add another track group below. Let's come to this track, and then if I right-click, I can say that I would like to add a layer track. No, I want to add a clip into this. So clips, new clips, clips, load source. I think I have to have one selected here. Load source. Yeah. I'm not sure why I'm not getting this. What I did before was I added some of these into the reservoir. So let's try that. I don't actually use this very often. So here in the reservoir, we will go and say new entry, and we will have, let's say, ham bone, and open that up. The one thing I'm not crazy about the reservoir is that the long names, you have to keep going like this to actually find the name of the thing. Okay, so the first one is the ham bone. All right, let's add another one to the reservoir. And I'm looking for the unicycle. That would be under ride. Unicycle. Like that. Okay. And that's loading that in. Second one is unicycle. First one is there. Now if we come over here, let's see if I can get these to come in. Doing something wrong. But let me show you that then I can decide that I want to say, okay, for the ham bone, I'm going to just pick the top half of the biped. And then for the second one, I'll choose filter. And then for that one, I'll say I want the unicycling to be done through there. And say, okay, like that. All right, well, I've failed on this one for some reason. I'm not sure why it's not working, but that gives you an idea of the motion mixer. Okay, that's pretty much it that I want to show you about biped. I do want to show you that after biped came along, Autodesk bought another product which was called cat, and cat does similar but takes biped a step further. So to do cat, you can create structures just like the biped, but they have a lot of pre-designed rigs. So if I go to the helper panel and I go to cat objects, and I choose cat parent, then I can pick a particular type of, let's say, here's a crab, and we'll click on it, and it's probably really tiny. Hold on. Let's try this again. Reset. And helper. Machine is just not wanting to cooperate today. Cat objects, cat parent. There we go. Okay, let's zoom in on this so you can see the power of this. So here's a little alien that Cat's put in here. See if I want to do another one. Cat parent, lay down a cat parent. And that's set to, let's try a horse. Back it up. There's a horse. Now, in the more recent versions, there's even some of these that look, I mean, they really look like the objects. They don't look like skeletons anymore. Lizard, make a lizard here. So they have centipedes, they have crabs, they have things with 4 legs, 10 legs, 100 legs, as many legs as you like. Cat is the system for that. Very powerful nonlinear animation system. Okay. All right. That really concludes most of what I wanted to talk about today regarding animation. But before we leave, there was a couple of things that I didn't finish up last week when we were talking about rendering. And I think it's important that any beginner who is studying Max knows about this. If I have a particular file and I want to render that file out to an animation, going to the rendering menu and choosing rendering setup, I get the dialog box here. Now I'm set up for mental ray right now. You'll be tempted to render your animations. I'll choose a range or an active time sequence. And I'll come over here to files, and there'll be you'll be tempted to render directly to an AVI file or to render directly to a QuickTime movie. But the best idea is not to do that and to take a second step to render directly to some sort of a still image file. If you have a lot of disk space, Targa is what we used to use in the old days, or TIFF. Nowadays, PNG or JPEG. And you can render a sequence of files. Let me cancel this for a second. And just, I'm just going to open up something that's got some animation in it. How about my train wheel? Save changes, no. And a chance to render out here. So this is a little animation. My wheels of the train are spinning around here like this. So if I was to render this out, I would go out to render setup, and I would choose files. I would have to choose a format, PNGs, a good one. Train wheel whoops, and hit save and say OK. And as long as my system is set to range, then when I click render, then I will get a sequence of files. Then, after I get the sequence of files, I can go to the RAM player. On the RAM player, I'm going to load up some files that I did for a video game that was called The Adventures of Marshal Marshmallowâ. And I just need to real quickly navigate to where they are kept at, and that's on the E drive under desktop backups. And then under level 13 is the name of the company. Jason was the guy who was doing this. And here are my test renders. And then let's see, how about the steam wheeler? So now what I'll see is I have a sequence of PNG files that have been rendered. Now there's a lot of PNG files here. I think there's maybe over 200. We'll go ahead and load these up with fuse, fix. Actually, I think there's a shorter one here that was the water tower. 5th pass, 6th pass. Here we go. Okay. So water tower. And let's open that up. It says it's got 450 frames, but let's try. Let's see what happens. Say OK. And say OK. So as you open this up, it loads these into memory. And as I'm doing this, I can see it happening. And it shows me how much memory I have available, how much memory I've used. And I can keep my finger over here on the stop loading button. And the stop loading button will then, if I start to run out of memory, also I can watch as I'm going here. But this is essentially loading in the sequence of animation that I created. And if I want to stop along the way, there, that's it. I now have the ability to play it and check it out in real time. And if I'm happy with a particular animation, the water tower comes over, it spills out some water, and it goes like that, and then it stops. And then once I've decided that let's stop it. There we go. Okay. Then all I have to do to create a movie of this is to click Save Channel. Now I can go and say I want this to be an AVI file or a QuickTime movie. We'll call this water tower _ test. And then when I say save, then I have the option of selecting the codec, I can choose from a variety of codecs, whatever's available, and save my QuickTime movie or my AVI file in that way. I didn't show you that when I load these files to begin with, let's go to a different one, up a directory. Here, let's look at the steam wheeler. Let's see. When I open this up, I can make this a different resolution. I can also say that I would like this to be, so let's do this half size, 240. And I also could, and when I say OK here, oh, maybe it didn't show it to me. There's the ability to, let's try this again. I think I probably have to open up one that is just PNG files. So steam wheeler. where was that one? The water tower, pass, 6 pass. I gotta say that. There we go. Okay. So if I choose these, I also have the ability to shoot on 2s, to say every nth with multiplier. That if I change that to 2, then I'm shooting on 2s. So every frame gets shot twice. Or if I say, look, 450 frames, that's too slow, I want to change it. So I could say every nth, every second frame, every third frame. This is really, really useful when you're rendering animation, because it lets you to control the speed of the animation. You can slow it down, you can speed it up, and you haven't just spent like a weekend rendering something and then you're unhappy with what you got. So the RAM player is a really good tool to use. Okay, that concludes the 3ds Max 101 class. I appreciate everybody for taking the time to dive into this. Max is a very complex program and there's tons more stuff to get into, but this has given you a taste of modeling, lighting, materials, rendering. There are many, many, many plugins for Max, and each one of those can give you a whole world of stuff to learn about. And you can focus on just one aspect of Max and spend many years doing that. So if there are no other questions, then we will end the session.
There was one question.
Okay.
As far as saving animations are concerned, is there any way to load up different codecs in the 64-bit installations yet? I've only been able to access 2 codecs in addition to uncompressed, yet I have other codecs installed on the system.
You know, I don't have experience with that. And let me see, I've got my 64-bit machine right here. Let me just get Max 2012 up and running. Is he talking about 2012 or is he talking about 2013?
I'm not sure. He doesn't specify.
Okay. Let me just see if on my system,
He says,
I don't have various codecs.
2010 at the moment, but I've seen the same happen on 2012.
Okay, you can, basically I haven't had to do that, and so I don't actually have extra codecs loaded on this 64-bit system. The truth is that up until this year, I resisted moving to 64-bit. And so just because it was new and it had its own set of bugs, and the kind of work that I was doing, the production work I was doing, was usually upstream from the rendering. So I didn't have to go there. I am getting 2012 up and running here just to see if I can choose different codecs. But, you know, I don't have the answer to that truly. Okay, so it's almost up and running here. And box. And make quick animation out of it. Okay, over there. Okay, so I'm going to render setup, and I'm going to say that I want to be to set to files, choose. Was he talking about AVI or was he talking about QuickTime? I mean, I guess he's probably thinking AVI. Is that correct?
He doesn't specify which codec he's referring to.
Okay. Well, indeed, I see only 2 codecs. I see a DV video encoder and I see MJPEG compressor and I see uncompressed for AVI. I don't think I have TechSmith or anything else that's been installed on this machine. So I'm inclined to think the answer is they haven't gotten there yet. Let me just actually try to see if I do something. Is there anything else that I can do besides don't save the file? Oh, don't tell me that QuickTime isn't even in there. I don't even see QuickTime under as an option here. So I think the answer probably is, yeah, they haven't gotten to that.
Alrighty.
Okay. All right. That's it for today.
Okay. And
thanks a lot.